That's a mouthful. Cryptography trends, buzzwords, and snake oil for 2023. So, first off, short disclaimer, all opinions are my own, that's just how opinions work. I will assume that you are familiar with the base concepts and jargon of cryptography, such as plaintext, ciphertext, stream cipher, block cipher, RSA, and so forth. Feel free to make a note of any terms that you are not familiar with, and you can ask me about them at the end. While everything in this presentation should be accurate, this was designed, and I say designed because it looks very ugly, with entertainment in mind. So fear not, if you want, we can go over the math later, but for now, I hope you all enjoy the ride. So, as I said in my abstract, cryptography is basically all around us. Like whenever you're sending stickers on Telegram to your friends, or you're sending messages or emails, cryptography is there. You just don't see what is it doing. It's just seamless. It's between the layers. So today Today we're going to give you a small itinerary to go over cryptography. So we'll start with the basic toolkit. So what should you keep in mind when you are evaluating a cryptographic protocol? Then we're going to go with what's buzzing. So basically, what are the big trends in the cryptography scene for 2023? Then moving on to traps and pitfalls, which is basically how these trends and how things are moving can lead you astray, and finally how to make sound choices. So basically how do you avoid these traps when you are tasked with building a secure application. Okay? So first thing is the basic toolkit. Don't need to memorize those, we're going to go over them one by one. Okay, so first one is those letters there, I cannot spell them, but basically is what you say is exactly what you say. So in cryptography, it's a very formal area, which sometimes is protected by magical notation. The idea here is that words in cryptography have very precise meanings, and while we colloquially, like here now, when I'm doing a presentation, we can casually use some terms interchangeably. When we are putting our chips down, like when I'm writing a specification for a protocol, everything must be precise, okay? So one example that I use is basically how you know, cryptographic hash functions are generally described as being one-way functions. This, however, is not formally true. A hint to that is that basically, if P equals NP, then one-way functions are not possible to exist. Since this is still an open question, we actually don't know if cryptographic hash functions are one-way. Okay, so that's the formal definition. But when you are explaining, oh, this is a cryptographic hash, you're generally going to say, oh, this is a one-way function, and people just go with it because, well, it's casual. The other one is basically the one-time pad, which is in the title of my talk. The one-time pad carries a very specific meaning. So while we have close enough analogs, so for example stream ciphers, you cannot have a one-time pad without all of those specifications. It has a very precise meaning, such as being the randomness source or the fact that the ciphertext it produces is malleable. Basically, when you are putting something down on paper, you have to be very, very precise when talking about cryptography. Second one is Kirchhoff's principle. This fellow here, August Kirchhoff. He was a Dutch cryptographer at the turn of the century. In 1899, he wrote a list. He worked in the military. He basically did secret communications. And he wrote a list of principles of how do you build a secret communication system. The second one, the second entry on that list is the most famous one, which is commonly stated as, a crypto system should be secure, even if everything about the system, except the key, is public knowledge. Basically, all common crypto systems that you use today abide by this principle. Like, you know how RSA works, you know how AES works, you know how Diffie-Hellman exchange works. You learned about it in school because of this. It's the polar opposite of security by obscurity. You basically have to assume that the enemy knows the system, and the only thing that you have to keep secure is the key. Okay? Moving onwards. Talking about systems and how to design systems, we go into Schneier's law. Schneier's law, there's that big quote, I'm just going to focus on the phrase in bold, is anyone, from the most clueless amateur to the best cryptographer, can create an algorithm that he himself cannot break. Basically, this means that if one of you guys pulled a block, pen and paper, you could probably come up with a cipher that you could show to this room and nobody would be able to break it. Would it be secure? Well, no. That's the whole point here. So basically, just because you cannot break something, it doesn't mean it's secure. Recall the point about one-way function, for example. Just because you call it something, it doesn't mean that it is. While breaking a system is actual proof that the system is not secure, the absence of said evidence does not mean the reverse. Like, oh, you can't break it, therefore it is secure. Being proven secure has a very specific meaning. Again, recall the first topic, that we must abide by. Like, for example, Hunter2 is a proven secure password. Okay? And we move on to economy of mechanism. Again, this is all about how do you design cryptographic systems, therefore how do you evaluate it must also reflect it. This comes from Sousa and Schroeder's design principles for security. You should keep the design as simple and as small as possible. So basically, a cryptographic system must be as simple as possible, but no simpler than that. Like, if I explain to you RSA, the description of RSA in Wikipedia is this. It's really, really short. If you go to see the description of AES, the description is also very short. Systems should be simpler, because the simpler they are, the easier it is for you to verify their properties, to understand how they work. Convolutions, which is basically overcomplicating things, lead to bad things. Okay? And finally, theoretical versus practical security. We're going back to the one-time path. You're going to be hearing a lot about it throughout this presentation. The one-time path is information theoretical secure. It cannot be broken regardless of how many computing power you throw at it for how much time it is. It's a proven result of information theory by Claude Shannon. It also makes it quantum proof. Oh, nice. Any symmetric cipher can be broken even if by trying all the keys. However, would this take forever? No, it would take a finite amount of time, which for all practical purposes is going to be forever, because you're not going to be here until the heat death of the universe trying out keys for ES256. So cryptography is meant to protect secrets for as long as they are relevant. So if the value of a certain piece of information vanishes 5 seconds after it has been sent, it's okay that the cipher that protects it can withstand only 2 weeks of brute forcing. The value is no longer there. So we must always keep this in mind, because you may be tempted, oh, I want this protection to last forever. Well, you don't need to. You only need it to last enough. Okay? And with these tools in mind, we can then start evaluating what's on offer today. And we're going to go with what's buzzing for 3 things. Note, when I proposed this talk, ChatGPT wasn't what it is now. So I couldn't add here LLMs and cryptography, but maybe for a future talk we'll go over it. Okay? So first thing on the deck is zero-knowledge proofs. So what's a zero-knowledge proof? The second standard posits that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And that's a cornerstone of good scientific discourse. However, what if we could prove our claims instead by proving that we have seen a piece of evidence without revealing said evidence? So here I'm going to basically go over a classical demonstration of this using these 2 markers. Thank God for accessories here. So basically, a zero-knowledge proof works in the following way. There's generally a prover and then a verifier that wants to determine a statement. So let's say that I'm completely colorblind. I see the world in gray tones, and these markers, as you all can see, have 2 different colors. I cannot see that. And I do not believe that these markers have 2 different colors. So we're going to prove the statement, these markers have 2 different colors. And how do I do this? Well, for example, I see just gray. I hold out this marker, I put it behind my back, and then I present it to you again, and I ask you, did I switch the marker? No, I did not switch the marker. I do repeat the same exercise. I'm using different hands, but work with me. Did I switch the marker? Yes, I switched the marker. So basically, we can repeat this as many times as is needed until myself am convinced that you can determine that the markers are different, and therefore I know that they have different colors. Okay? I'm always seeing gray tones, so I don't see the colors at all. This is the concept behind the zero-knowledge proof. By proving that the markers are different colors, I gain no information. I don't know that one is blue, I do not know that one is red, I simply know that they are different, which is the statement that I wish to prove. These markers have different colors. Okay? So the protocols go in various ways. So completeness is basically if all participants are honest, they will be convinced of this fact of the statement by an honest prover. Zero knowledge, which is what I showed. Basically, I gain no knowledge about the markers. You can only say, oh, you switched it. So I knew that they were different in some way. And here is the important one, which is soundness. Okay? If the statement is false, no cheating prover can convince an honest verifier it is true, except for some small probability. So what's this wrinkle here with probability? So the probability is the following. Remember, I did this test with the colored markers twice. You didn't know if I was going to switch or not, but perhaps you could have guessed it. Like you knew that I was going to not switch and then switch. Okay? So we keep repeating the sequence. Like if I did it 4 times, would you be able to guess if I was going to switch, not switch, switch, not switch? Maybe. So the idea here is that these proofs, much like certain algorithms like Rabin-Miller to determine if numbers are prime, work by reducing the possibility that you're being tricked by going over multiple rounds. Because, for example, the probability that you're guessing what I was going to do with the markers in one time is 50-50. Second time, it's down to 25, and it keeps going. Like if we did 128 rounds, it's 1 over 2 to the 1 over 1 to the power of 128 that you actually guessed what I was going to do with them. Okay? So these proofs work via probability, via the number of rounds that we go through. Okay? So what we can use zero knowledge proofs for? So basically we can use these to solve classes of problems where we want to confirm a statement or behavior but keep the details about it private. The most common case for this is authentication. It should be obvious, like when you authenticate to a website, you show that you know your password, you show that you know your private key, and that allows you to get in. With a zero knowledge proof, you can actually achieve the same result without revealing details about what is your private key or revealing what is your password. Okay? These come in basically 2 flavors. The interactive flavor is what we did right now. So basically, message exchanges and we go a number of rounds. And then the one that is popular with blockchains, which is the non-interactive one, where you basically commit a series of values, and because you cannot guess the output of an hash function, that simulates the result of the number of rounds that we did. The same way that you cannot guess what actions am I going to do, you cannot guess the output of the hash function, and you get a similar output there. Okay? These are immensely popular. This is the most popular schema, ZK snarks. So you should be seeing these around all the place where you hear about blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Okay? And we go to the second one. I'm moving in fast. It's called Fully-Homomorphic encryption. Well, there's a lot of big words in this presentation, so I hope it's not too bad. So I'm going to, again, use a story to illustrate what this is. So imagine that you have a pile of identically wrapped sandwiches. They're wrapped in thick paper, and you cannot see what their ingredients are. You cannot open them because of food safety. Let's think instead of pizzas, we're getting sandwiches, I don't know. And you want to sort them out into vegetarian and meat options. So how would you go about that? This should be simple enough. Even if they're wrapped, you can check their weight, you can smell them, you can probably glance over and you can figure out, this is probably a vegetarian sandwich, or this is a meat sandwich. Okay, now here is the hard part. I need you to combine 2 sandwiches without unwrapping them. Do you think you can do that? Can you combine a meat sandwich and a vegetarian sandwich without unwrapping them? It's a bit more tricky, right? Why am I giving this example? Well, because fully-homomorphic encryption deals with these kinds of issues in ciphertext. So basically, in algebra, this is just a definition studied over Wikipedia, an homomorphism is a structure-preserving map between 2 algebraic structures of the same type. Cryptography, similarly as well, it refers to a transformation between 2 sets of data while preserving the relationship between them. Well, what does this mean, more or less? So let's say that you encrypt the number 1, and I encrypt the number 1, and we can add those ciphertexts, and on the other end, we'll get something. If the system is fully homomorphic, you might get the number 2, and if it's not, you might get gibberish. Here's the key difference between the fully homomorphic and the rest. So basically, you already have systems that are partially homomorphic, such as RSA and Al-Gamal.
Yes. You get the number 2. You get the encryption of number 2.
You get the ciphertext.
You don't get the clear text. You get the encryption of number 2.
Exactly. You get the encryption of number 2. So you have systems that are partially homomorphic. So RSA and Al-Gamal, which is basically means that you can do operations with the ciphertext and still produce a meaningful result. But it's limited in the number of operations that you can do. If the system is fully homomorphic, which is the F there, you can compute an arbitrary function over a set of ciphertexts, such as Pedro was saying, such as adding or tallying up encrypted integers. This is the most easy example to fathom. Is basically, we in this room all choose a number to encrypt, and basically we could add up the ciphertexts and in the end get the sum of that, with never seeing the numbers that each one of us chose in the clear. Okay? So, what are the key applications of this? We have 2 big use cases. The first one should be the most obvious one, electronic voting. So basically, with a system like this, you should be able to cast an encrypted vote, and it can be tallied without revealing its content. So basically, as your vote goes through the whole system, nobody can see the plain text of your vote. Okay? This does not solve the electronic voting problem outright, because there are still a number of things that you need to account for, such as coercion and end-to-end auditability. However, it does help in creating systems where the votes do not have to be in the clear when they are counted, which is important. Electronic voting as a whole subset of systems that fully homomorphic encryption will fix, but that's a topic for another talk. And the other one, which is a big one as well, is privacy-preserving machine learning. So in a data-driven world, being able to work over data that is kept fully private would really help alleviate privacy burdens. So consider that you want to do, let's say, machine learning, which, as you all know, is just math, over a set of medical data. There are still privacy implications in that, even if you remove the patient's names and what are identifying, because, for example, if you're researching genetic disease, your genetic signature is unique and uniquely tied to you. So you might not want that they're sharing your genetic makeup across data sets or with other parties. So having something like this would be a really big breakthrough in terms of being able to provide data to be used in medical studies without revealing anything about the data, as it would be kept fully encrypted throughout the process. This sounds lovely. Why aren't we funding this? Well, we are, but there's a big issue why this is unfeasible. It's very slow. Very, very, very slow. Here we always have to put the things in context, of course. When we say very slow, well, this is still being computed, but it's basically while you would expect a machine learning model to go through a few million rows of data in, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of training, a basic one, a fully homomorphic one will take 4 times as long, 5 times as long. A really big difference in terms of that, depending on the crypto system that is used. So these schemes have very stringent requirements to uphold their security margins, which require huge parameters and costly computations. Like, for example, one of the crypto systems requires on multiple exponentiation. So basically, as you can imagine, if you're going through a data set with 10 million rows and you have to do multiple exponentiations for it and then pass the thing through the model, that thing is going to be very computationally expensive. Also, to get the precision levels at the end result, so basically, so data isn't lost when you're doing all of these transformations on the ciphertext, you need to actually do more calculations. So the whole thing is massively expensive. The hopes are that hardware acceleration that is in development is going to make this a bit more agreeable in the future, but we are still a few ways away from that. Okay? So we've gone to zero-knowledge proofs, fully homomorphic encryption, and all of you are probably here for post-quantum cryptography. But let's stop for a bit and back up. So we're already going for post-quantum. We never talked about quantum. Let's go back a bit and talk about quantum stuff. So what is quantum computing? This is a gross oversimplification. Please do not take this as gospel. This is just a way to simplify how it goes. So basically, straight out of Wikipedia, a quantum computer is a computer that exploits quantum mechanical phenomena. So basically, you probably have seen the descriptions. A qubit can be, or Schrödinger's cat experiment. The cat is alive, the cat is dead, until you actually observe the result to lock the state. The cat can be both alive or dead. Here it's more or less the same thing. There's a superposition. It's possible to represent multiple possibilities with a single qubit. Once you observe the good result, the game is over, but until then, the ball keeps rolling. Again, gross oversimplification. And this is the magic sauce behind quantum parallelism. The speed up that can be achieved by quantum computers that somewhat bypasses Moore's law. Okay? So basically, if you can represent multiple states within the same, with a small number of qubits, you can basically accelerate with native parallelism a bunch of operations. Although currently we're experiencing a veritable cargo cult about quantum speedup. Is it, like, what can quantum computers actually accelerate? Can they accelerate everything? Can they accelerate nothing at all? Is it all a hoax? Well, we don't know. We need to proceed a bit with caution because there's a lot of news going on about quantum computing, but real understanding and real practical examples are still very few and far between. So what can we use quantum computers for? Well, quantum computers require quantum algorithm, because if you're running a classical algorithm on quantum computers, it does, well, you can already do that. You don't need to spend the whole money in getting a quantum computer, which are massively expensive to run them. So we have the two most popular, well-known quantum algorithms, and they're almost 30 years old, both of them. Only recently, as technology caught up with the invention of these algorithms, so that we can actually test them out in practical ways. As you can imagine, in 1994 and 1996, quantum computing was basically, well, it existed on a sheet of paper. And they invented the algorithm. So on the left, we have Dr. Love Grover. He invented Grover's algorithm. Of course, it's named after him, in 1996. Grover's algorithm is, it finds the input to a known function that produces a certain output after sampling square root of n outputs, where n is the domain size. Switching this up and in simple terms, this is the quantum search algorithm. It's basically a way to search an input that produces a certain output extremely fast. It's which implies that search space reduction can affect symmetric cryptography. For example, let's say that you have something encrypted with AES-128, and I want to brute force the key. Well, if I was able to apply this, I can reduce the search space to 2 to the 64, rather than testing 2 to the 128 keys. That's what it's used for. And here, Peter Shor, who was given us so many headaches, invented Shor's algorithm. It factors numbers in a much more efficient way than what can be currently achieved by classical computers. By this, I mean that it factors an integer in polynomial time. This is the formal definition of what he did. And here is, Grover is still very interesting in terms of how it affects cryptography, but Shor's algorithm is the destroyer of worlds, let's say. Integer factorization can affect asymmetric schemes that rely on it, such as the ever-popular RSA. Okay. So, how do these come into play? For context, the security of the systems we use rely on certain assumptions. The common examples are factoring a semi-prime, so which is the product of two primes, wink wink RSA, if you know one of the factors is trivial, and quite hard if you don't. So this is the basis for RSA using massive sized primes. The other one is it's hard to compute the discrete logarithm of a value. So it's the x in this equation, generator to the x equals a mod n, from the final value itself. This is the basis for Diffie-Hellman, where we use n, again, massive groups as well. So being able to quickly factor these values of n, or semi-primes, by quickly, again, polynomial time, compromises the security margins of this, reducing its efficacy by a lot. It's the quantum apocalypse, or so they say. Okay? So it's not really quantum, it's the numbers. So we started looking for alternatives, right? So enter NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. So NIST held a post-quantum cryptography competition, and the goal with that competition was basically to pick systems that were not vulnerable to the classes of problems that quantum computers can solve efficiently. I'm not going to go through all of these, I'm just going to give a brief overview. Lattice systems were the majority. I believe we got 24 submissions or so. Basically, you can think of lattices as, well, it's a group in space. It's like a pegboard, basically. You have a set of points that are separated by a minimum distance, and and you can perform addition between the points. The idea is that basically quantum computers do not know how to efficiently solve lattice problems such as shortest vector and closest vector, which is given a point, give me the closest point to it, or given 2 points, give me the shortest distance between them in a lattice. We have code-based, which is, if you recall Hamming encoding from your school years, it's basically that, but on steroids, and it's used by Macalise. Multivariate, which is based on the difficulty of solving multivariate polynomials, also very complex. We have a few odd choices here that only had one submission, braid group and supersingular elliptic of isogeny. And at the end we got hash-based systems which are only for signatures. I'll just do a remark here, which is basically, do you know how HMAC is? HMAC is basically a construction. It says if you can pipe in a function here, you can create a message authentication code with this process. These fit the same, but to protect against quantum computing. They're basically, they're using known algorithms that we have now, but basically detailing how you should put things together so that they can resist quantum powered attack. Okay? So we started with that. We got about, 60 to 70 something submissions. We had 24 or so with lattice methods. And in October 2022, we got to the third round, which decided that the things that would be becoming standards would be these 3 methods that are lattice-based. Like I said, they were the majority coming in the field, so it's no surprise that at the end we got lattice methods out of it. We got Sphinx, which is hash-based, used for signatures, but here's a wrinkle. As you can see, the third round was supposed to be the final, but we're going to the 4th round. Oh, why is that? Well, it should not be lost on you that basically, if you look, all 3 of those are lattice-based. So imagine what would happen if, like, we set these as the standard, and then we figure out, oh, lattice has a really big problem. Like, if you do these transformations, you can just break all of these systems. Oh, that's not good. So basically, NIST got put into the position where basically, okay, we said that third round was final, but it's actually not. We're going to go for a 4th round. So we have a few more systems, in this case that are code-based, and Psych, supersingular elliptic curve isogeny, also passed to the 4th round. So basically so that we can add diversity into the system, so if a mechanism would crumble, it wouldn't destroy all post-quantum cryptography. And I say crumble with a specific state because, well, do you see this symbol here about Psych? There was something fun about Psych. So Psych was very peculiar. It was a unique system. It was a single one that came in using this mechanism of supersingular elliptic curve isogeny. I can explain it later. It's just a lot of complicated math. But here's what happened. This is a system that was supposed to be quantum resistant. Small problem, it was broken by a classical computer. Actually, it was broken by some laptops they had lying around, and they basically just, some people, these 2 fellows here, Wouter Kastrik and Thomas de Croo, they basically, from Leuven, they basically look at it and thought, oh, this has a problem in the way that it generates the keys, and they just broke the whole system wide open with the classical computer. So this is an important outcome of that competition because we do these competitions not to pick winners, but to see things get broken. When these systems are broken, it's the best possible outcome, more or less, because it means that we did not put a system into production or as a standard that is unsafe. So we want these systems to be attacked. Remember Schneider's law. We want the systems to be attacked by people that do this for a living and are looking to find their flaws, like I said, the people that created this didn't see this flaw. It had to be someone else that was observing from the outside that went in and broke it. Okay, so this is so we're moving on to that, but the standards in the third round are already starting to see some adoption. I believe Cloudflare has already started offering some TLS versions with Kyber. And we're starting to see some small adoption, like experimenting. But we're still a few years away from PQC, post-quantum cryptography, being mainstream. Remember, most of the certificates that you use in your websites now are still signed by RSA, which is an algorithm that's almost 50 years old. So, but despite not being mainstream, we don't let that stop you. So, as you know, this is the usual process where I work, which is basically, this is me. We need to be quantum proof. Somebody say we should build our own, we should get a vendor, and I say we should wait until the protocols are mature enough. And that's me out the window. This is slippery when wet because, well, we're halfway there. Okay? So now it moves us on to the traps and pitfalls that you're going to be seeing if you're in a position in your company to be the lead in picking out a quantum system or to advise people on should I get a quantum system. It seems like I'm selling a car. Okay? So, first, let's go with the traps and pitfalls. Hard to read. Quantum computers are going to destroy all encryption everywhere, instantly, at the same time. Like the movie that won the Oscars. Everything everywhere at the same time. No, not really. So, quantum computers are not a magic wand that you can wave at encryption and like, bang! And encryption gets broken immediately. As 256 GCM is still going to be perfectly safe from decades to come. Remember, what attacks say is 256 is Grover's algorithm, and that can simply reduce the search space to 2 to the 1 to the 8, which is still a monstrously enormous number. Like the number of particles in the universe is estimated to be, what, 10 to the 80? That's bigger. That's a bigger number than that. But the focus is always going to be on RSA. So factoring 2048-bit semi-prime, so an RSA key, would take a huge amount of time on a scale that is incomprehensible to a human. While a quantum computer may speed up this process, this speed increase is not instantaneous. It does not become, oh, we took 70 hours to do this. With the quantum computer, it's instant. It's not like that. The acceleration that you get is in line with how good the technology is. Can you keep the computer stable enough to get the results on the other end? Can you power it enough so that the computations go through? We're still way, way, way away from that. So just to notice that, we've been 10 years away from a computer that can break 240-bit RSA for the past 20 years and count. This year, for example, an article came out by some Chinese researchers that news outlets all across the world picked up and said, oh, they were able to factor the 248-bit RSA key. No, they didn't. I know this for two reasons. One, if they had done it, the research would have never left China. Second one is that I read the article and they actually said that they didn't. They say, in small letters at the end, we theorize that if the quantum acceleration that we are seeing is actually doable, we would be able to factor 248-bit number. They never claimed they did it, but that didn't stop the news outlets from, they did it, let's go, let's keep selling, let's get the FUD going. Okay? So, what's the other argument that I always hear? Your communications are being sent en masse to decrypt with quantum computers in the future. Yes, you probably already heard this one as well. This falls from the previous one. While this might be true, just propping up cloud storage industry like more SSDs, sell more hard drives. I can even imagine Western Digital is sponsoring this. Fear not and recall the toolkit. Recall the final thing that I said about practical versus theoretical. Does it matter that 60 years from now they can decrypt a message to your bank saying that yes, I want to buy a Big Mac at 3 a.m. I need this now. At the end, let's consider this from a purely economical argument. Let's say that you are a nation state, you have a huge amount of money, and here's what we have. We have ephemeral key exchanges, perfect forward secrecy, double ratchets, and a bunch of other mechanisms that are basically constantly rotating keys. every day. Like your messages in WhatsApp that you send at the end of the day are encrypted with the same key that you used in the morning, and so forth, because we keep rotating keys. Can you even estimate how many signature keys you would need to break for this to even be a viable endeavor? No, like, the common folk are safe with this. It doesn't, like, if you are being targeted to get access to your communications, I should call you that Robert Host cryptanalysis still exists, and they can just snatch you and just force you to give up the password. You don't need to be worried about these kind of things. Okay? Alas, this is basically what I get in my LinkedIn inbox since I became a manager. It's care to buy some algorithms to help your organization. I found it endearing because they don't read all the things that I have about cryptography in my profile, and they just go out and pitch me. And I'm like, do you understand that I understand these things? It's really odd. So basically, here are two alert signs of something. If someone is pitching you something that is not good, here's what you should be looking for. First one, secret proprietary algorithms. This is an obvious no-no because it's a violation of Kashaf's principle. That outright should exclude all of this. So any offerings that hinge on secret proprietary algorithms should be avoided at all costs. So because, well, here are a few examples. For one, instant vendor lock-in. Basically, you bought the system, well, now you have to use it. If this company decides to hike the price by 10x, well, you already bought it. Sharing data is limited to only others to have the same service. Here's a clear example that you probably have. Like, do your parents use Signal, or do you have to message them on WhatsApp? You basically get locked in that small little garden. Like, if you use a proprietary system, then you can only share data or communicate with others that use the same proprietary system. Okay? Like HD DVD. Does anyone still remember that? There's an increased chance of compromise due to the lack of auditability. Because basically, the system is secret. You do not know the algorithm. As far as you know, the algorithm may even just base 64 encode everything and then shift things around. And you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, this is encrypted. It's not. And you also get, and this is a slight thing, but you get more performance improvements on chip makers. So basically, why AES has remained the dominant algorithm despite the fact that we now have better options is basically because hardware makers have AES pathways in their hardware that just make hardware AES stupid fast. Stupid fast. Like, we have better algorithms now. People are still going to keep using AES for everything because processors make it really, really fast. And overall, using something like this is a bad idea. Oh, put a reverse card. Oh, okay. In this case, it's the other way around. They actually have an algorithm. They're publishing it. They have a lot of white papers. This is good. Is this good? Well, not really. There's a corollary. The algorithm being public is a good thing, but it's not by itself sufficient. Because published articles and white papers need to stand up to review and also come from reputable sources. Because anyone can push a preprint to archive, or anyone can go to one of those pay-to-publish newspapers and just print something. Like, sometimes I get a pitch and you go see, oh, what's your sources? And it's a newspaper from Kazakhstan in the science section that says, oh yeah, this person from the local university discovered this big thing and nobody else wants the world to know it. So, in essence, recall what happened with Psych. Psych was published and whatnot. It needs to stand up to proper scrutiny over a prolonged period of time before it can be trusted. Like, if the article is 2 years old or something, maybe iffy. Recall, AES has been around since 1978. Don't quote me on this, but I think that's the date, more or less, or a bit later. So, those are the things with the algorithms, and then you come to the mechanisms. This is what I like to call the encryption onions. So what's the encryption onion? So let M be our plain text and C our ciphertext. So your ciphertext is the base 64 of the SHA-256 of the encryption with Serpent with Twofish with SHA-20 of AES of your message. An encryption onion is based on a well-known result, well, at least for kids, if you have small kids, you know this, that if you tie 2 Ferraris, their top speed doubles. If you tie 10 Ferraris, they are so fast that they can fly into space. Just trust me on this, okay? I'm a proper scientist. But in reality, that's not what happens. So In reality, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And once you encrypt something with the proper algorithm, so the first step here with AES, everything else is just some elaborate security theater to chew up CPU cycles. But it's a hallmark of somebody that's pitching you bad crypto. If they encrypt with something that you know is secure and then they keep going, it's going to be bad all the time. It also shows a complete failure not to properly threat model, because basically they're like, oh, we're diversifying our sources. Well, I'm just going to compromise how you get your keys then. I'm not going to decrypt this, I'm just going to attack your keys and that will be it. Here's another variation of this. I call it prestidigitation, which is basically producing magic tricks. So they take your password, they do an affine transformation, they do convert it to sound wave, they whisper it to ChatGPT, and then they get your secret key. Oh, this is cool. So, but here's what I do. I basically ignore all of this, and then I just look. Oh, there's a password there, and there's a key there. So I'm going to attack either of the ends of the system. I'm not going to care about this. This is just theater. I'm going to attack this part. I'm going to attack that part. That's basically what you see in these overcomplicated systems. These overcomplicated systems are basically sales by intimidation. Like, if you do not understand it, oh, it must be good, I guess. I do not understand the link of it, and it seems very, very hard. But that's the thing. A savvy attacker that's observing the system is not going to fall for it. Because, like, if you go to a place and, oh, the locks are hardened, the glass is bulletproof, well, I'm just going to look at the pin pad and see what numbers are a bit worn out, and just wait a bit and unlock it. Basically, if you have a bunch of transformations in the middle, but they don't add anything because the inputs and final outputs are the same, generally a sign that they're selling you some bad crypto. And here we are for the bonus round. Bonus round is the one-time pad, of course. The name of my talk, it keeps showing up. As stated in the beginning, the vulnerable one-time pad is quantum secure. So it keeps coming up time and time again whenever people are selling you quantum proof and quantum secure technology. So the common trope is, well, they're actually not pitching you the one-time pad because the one-time pad has, as I said, very specific meaning. This accepting the one-time pad into your hearts means you also accept its flaws and that you accept the very things that push you to use other mechanisms. So you have the malleability, like the ciphertext can decrypt into whatever plain text it can be. That's one of the reasons why the one-time pad is information theoretically secure. It has no built-in message authentication. Sharing the key, because the key is as big as the plain text, is extremely hard. And getting a proper source of entropy is also extremely difficult. How do they work around this? Well, they just tell you, well, to do the malleability and authentication, we add MAC code to this. For the key, we actually don't have a key that long. We use a smaller key, and then you use a generator to produce the string. Ah, you mean like a string cipher? No, it's a one-time pad. No, that's a string cipher. One-time pad. Of course, it's always the same thing. Like, the string cipher is the closest analog that we have to one-time pads, and they're generally selling you string ciphers. However, since one-time pads and the Wikipedia, when you Google them, show us quantum secure, they're always going to pitch you one-time pad in violation of what you say is exactly what you say. Okay? And this is what you might find, those were the things that you may find in your inbox if you ever find yourself in a position to do decisions on vendoring. So basically, this is the pitches that you get. Now let's say that you are doing the implementation part. Okay? This is the final stretch, don't worry. Not that you're doing the implementation part. So here's how you do sound choices. Remember that choice up there? It's ASACB, ASJCM. I'll provide the answer at the end. So let's go with the do's and don'ts model. So you do not use the insecure number generator. Write something yourself to produce your special number such as prime. Nah, don't do that. Use proper generators paired with good verification to ensure that you get what you need. Okay? Use good mechanisms and always verify them. And you're thinking, but what's the worst that could happen? Like in my Java projects in school, I used random and generated the numbers, it was fine. Well, luckily, I came prepared. So this CVE is from last year, and there's a lot of text here, but I'll give you the list. This is for Fujifilm and Canon printers. So basically, they generated keys to sign the firmware for those printers and to sign those programs. And here's how they generated the primes for RSA. They first found a prime, and then it went like this. Is this a prime? No. Is this a prime? No. Is this a prime? Yes. Because, as Bertrand's postulate says, and I said it again, there's always a prime between n and 2n. So basically they pick the prime and then they increase the counter until they find the other one. This creates a problem, which is, well, if the two values of p and q in RSA are very close, you can factor them by a method that Fermat created in 1778, I believe. So a 300-year-old attack on your private keys. So what happened here is that they did so, and all of those keys for those printers, as long as you got the certificate, you could get the private key instantly with zero use of computational power. They had to issue emergency firmware updates because, well, this was completely broken. And this is what happens when you choose port generators and don't actually verify the results. So for the next one, so you're going to pick a library for something. You just pick a random library that you find on GitHub. It has 500 plus stars, thousands of users, should be fine. Thousands of people can't be wrong. No, you should actually use properly vetted libraries that are built by reputable teams, like teams that have well-known history in building cryptographic libraries and are verified by recognized experts, and even then, you have to keep a close eye on them. Okay? So you always have to do due diligence. Do not go, oh, I'm going to install this from PyPy, and that's it. I'm not going to care much, I'm going to trust. Because, well, this is what happens. So if you follow the blockchain and crypto and NFTs and whatnot, this is basically what happened with some fellas. They're from AnySwap, which is basically a protocol to swap tokens between different blockchains. So they implemented an algorithm that uses multi-party computation, which is a way to compute multiple parties to compute a secret, and they released their own version. Good library used by many other blockchain implementations that came along. So there was a problem. Do you remember the zero-knowledge proofs when we say that we go multiple rounds to be sure? Yeah, so the thing is, 128 rounds, which is the default for the algorithm, was taking a bit too long, so the developers changed the number to 1. So the thing only did 1 round, and trusted it. So it became apparent that you could forge a token transfer by simply having watched the token transfer happen once, because you could just guess with a 50-50 chance that you would be able to produce the necessary proof. Ain't that amazing? And that thing was everywhere. Like a bunch of implementations and multiple chains use this. Vetted, proven libraries, folks. Always keep an eye out on the code. Okay? This is a security passive, of course. Trust your users, they're good people, even if you don't, and this is where the twist comes, trust your developers, they'll squash all the bugs. Well, trust or don't, it's your choice. Basically, you can build things in a zero-trust model, it's a popular thing, but always, always, always verify, even when dealing with internal code. And this is important, because you all know that, well, user input should be verified, sanitized, and all that, but sometimes people are a bit lax when you're getting a call from an internal function. Right? So, what's the worst that can happen? Oh well, this can happen. This is CV 2022-0778 for OpenSSL. Have you ever heard of OpenSSL? Popular library, isn't it? So basically, what OpenSSL did is that they had a function which calculated the modular square roots that was only used internally. Okay? However, it could still receive a parameter that, if not prime, would cause the thing to loop infinitely and make your machine into a hair eater. Why is this very peculiar? You can't really see because the projector isn't very good, but in the first comment, which is in the comment that's up top, they're saying P must be prime. The comment outlined the condition that the code should check. Did the code check that condition? Of course not. The code trusted that P would be prime. So basically, when they did the fix, they wrote really big, P must be prime, otherwise an error or an incorrect result must be returned, and then they actually did the necessary fix in the code. How could this be exploited? Well, on the server side, basically, if you created a server that provided a certificate that had a non-prime modulus, your machine, when connecting to SSH, let's say that you're roaming around and probing some ports, would connect to this and then just start spinning up. And you wouldn't know why, because, oh, well, I'm just SSHing into random things. Don't do that, by the way. That's bad practice. Yeah, so basically, it would turn OpenSSL into a CPU word. Okay, fun ones. Good code should always ship bug-free. Well, this is a non-mantra. There is no need to fail securely, as it will not fail at all. I do not make bugs in my code. Well, write code that is fail secure and enforces, not relies on safe defaults. Here is a slight nuance. While enforcing is different than relying. Relying is you trust that the safe defaults from other libraries will be good. Let's say that in this day and age, basically, software is a bunch of dependencies. Like, you rarely have a software that has no external dependencies. It's just a bunch of packages thrown in. And NPM, for example, is very famous for that. You just get a lot of packages. You just need to import everything. So sometimes you cannot rely that the developers of said packages were security-minded. You actually have to enforce that they use proper defaults so to make everything work safely. Well, what could go wrong here? What, we make good picks in our libraries. Well, this is from NPM, of course, because NPM is like a cool language, full of holes. I'm joking, but it is. So basically, what happened here? JSON Web Token is a very popular authentication process. So basically, you get the JWT token that is signed and whatnot. And JSON Web Token is the most popular library to do it in NPM. So what happened was that there's a function called JWT verify, which basically verifies if the JSON Web Token is valid. And there's an algorithm very peculiar called none that we also add in TLS. The algorithm none is basically whatever. It's plain text. It does no transformation, just where to be a placeholder. And there was a possibility that if you had a misconfiguration in your function, none is the default that it went. So basically, an error somewhere would make the verification method default to none, which is very secure, of course. No algorithm, all is fine, everything passed through. Okay? As you can imagine, this basically made you that you could forge any JWT that you wanted. As long as you could trigger the error, you could just present it whatever, it will never verify the key. We had a similar bug with Java last year as well. It was called psychic signatures, where you could forge an ACDCSA signature because it also had insecure defaults. Okay? And the one below, it's, again, same thing. You could misconfigure the library, so basically, if you didn't pay attention to how things were going, you could allow the library to verify things that were signed with one key with another algorithm's key, which is, in this case, DSA keys, digital signature algorithm, which is Schnorr. Basically, it could allow you to fabricate a token that would verify with a different kind of key. Again, insecure defaults bite you because if you don't go and actually check what the library is doing, you're going to get your application into trouble. Yeah, final slides. Of course, roll your own crypto, just follow the articles and give it your own twist, suit your needs, important whatever. Do not roll your own crypto. Follow OWASP recommendations, of course. Top 10 for password storage, top 10 for cryptography as well. Fully understand what you are doing, and this is the important part. If you are building a cryptographic system, you must fully understand what's going on. It's not like, oh, this is the default, I'm going to go with it. No, fully understand what's going on. Because if you don't, here's what's going to happen. You can't see the code, sorry, I expected bigger precision, but basically, these are some fellows that have an alarm application, and what happened is that they built their own encrypt and decrypt functions. Everything fine so far. Small problem, they used a CVC mode, and it had no message authentication. So you could probably mess with messages, forge whatever you wanted, well, no verification was added. Because, well, why not use the default things? Oh no, they needed to have their own function. Oh well. And this is the end. Do you recall the choice at the first? It's basically AS, ECB, and GCM. GCM is there, good stuff. Don't use ECB, bad idea, okay? And this was my talk. Thank you for your time, and I hope you find it enjoyable.